On this path, it's easy to think that the hardest part is waking up. But often what comes after is harder, but in a more subtle way. The search doesn't stop, it just changes shape. Something opens, sensitivity grows, perception shifts, and alongside that, new ways of getting lost quietly appear. Not as obvious mistakes, not as wrong turns, more like inner movements that feel meaningful, even sincere, but slowly pull the process of balance. These aren't failures. They're not signs of doing something wrong. They are common patterns. Places many people pass through once the inner search begins to deepen. Today, the reflection looks at 4 of those places, not as warnings, not as rules, just as lived observations of how the path can quietly bend sideways. Trap number 1, ego. At some point on this path, something starts to open. There's more sensitivity, more intuition, a sharper perception of energy. The inner world feels richer, more alive, and quietly, almost unnoticed, a shift can happen. Thoughts appear like I'm more developed, I see things others don't, I'm no longer part of the ordinary material world. It doesn't sound aggressive, it often feels calm, even elevated. But this is one of the earliest steps on the path, because the moment the sense of being special or chosen takes over, something else begins to fade, the connection to the heart. The source of what's being felt doesn't live in the mind, and it doesn't come from being above others. It comes through the heart. When the ego starts to inflate, that connection quietly thins out. And then something subtle happens. Experiences may still occur, energy can still be felt, insights, sensations, even powerful inner states can come and go. But awakening doesn't deepen. What grows instead is an illusion of progress, an identity built around being spiritual, around knowing, around being different. From the inside, it can feel convincing, but without the heart, the process loses its grounding. And what looks like awakening is often just the ego learning a new language. Trap number 2, escaping life. Another common turn on this path looks very different. Instead of feeling special, there is a quiet hope that spirituality will take care of things. That if you meditate enough, pray sincerely enough, stay high or aligned long enough, something else will dissolve on its own. Debts will somehow resolve. Relationships will soften without difficult conversations. The body will heal without attention. Life will rearrange itself as if effort is no longer required. From the inside, that doesn't feel like avoidance. It often feels like trust, like surrender. But slowly, reality starts knocking. Bills don't disappear. Patterns in relationships repeat. The body still asks to be listened to. Decisions still need to be made. And that's where the trap reveals itself. Spiritual practice becomes a way to not deal, to stay above life instead of inside it, to float rather than meet what's here. But this path was never meant to replace life. It doesn't exempt anyone from the human layer. It doesn't cancel responsibility, action, or consequence. It's not an escape route. It's a way of meeting life more consciously. When practices are used to avoid unresolved issues, a kind of inner illusion forms. For a while it can feel peaceful, even convincing, but eventually it collapses, because whatever is being avoided doesn't disappear, it waits. Trap number 3, borrowed power. At some point, the search can turn outward. not toward life, but toward helpers, teachers, courses, initiations, rituals, methods, lineages, special transmissions. From the inside, it feels responsible, serious, committed. There's a sense that something important is missing and that it lives out there. If I take this course, something will finally open. If I receive this initiation, it will activate. If I work with the right teacher, I'll get there. If I pay for this ritual, it will unlock what's still closed. And to be fair, these things can help. Techniques can expand perception, guides can point out blind spots, practices can sharpen attention. None of that is the problem. The trap appears when power slowly moves outward, when clarity is no longer trusted unless it comes from an authority, when inner knowing feels insufficient without confirmation, when progress is measured by how many tools, teachers, or rituals are involved. Learning becomes endless, practicing becomes constant, and yet something essential doesn't quite land. Because activation doesn't arrive from the outside. No technique can replace inner contact. No initiation can do the work of presence. No teacher can leave your attention for you. It's possible to study for years, to practice daily, to perform rituals, attend retreats, collect teachings, and still remain untouched. And it's also possible for something to shift quietly without leaving home, without a guide, without a method, simply by turning inward and staying there. Spiritual maturity is always autonomous. Needing constant external stimulation is not devotion, it's dependency. And dependency keeps the center of gravity outside of you. Trap 4. Leaving the body behind. There is a moment on this path when attention wants to move upward, towards subtle states, toward insight, toward expanded perception, and the body quietly drops out of focus. Sleep becomes irregular, food becomes secondary, the nervous system lives in constant stimulation, screens, noise, information, tension. At the same time, emotional life is often left untouched. Old wounds remain unresolved, patterns repeat, relationships stay draining or abusive, pain is spiritualized instead of felt. From the inside, it doesn't feel like neglect, it feels like priority, as if tending to the body or the psyche were something lower, something distracting from real spiritual work. But this is where imbalance begins, because whatever moves through consciousness moves through the body. Spiritual energy doesn't arrive into empty space. It needs ground, a nervous system that can hold it, a psyche that isn't constantly fighting old battles. When the ground isn't ready, things start to distort. Restlessness appears, anxiety, mental fog, emotional instability, a sense of being uncentered or scattered. Not because something is wrong with the path, but because the foundation is fragile. Depth requires containment. Ignoring the body doesn't make the process faster. Ignoring psychological health doesn't make it purer. It makes it unstable. The body is not an obstacle. The psyche is not a distraction. They are the soil. And whatever is trying to grow depends entirely on how well that soil is cared for. If any of these reflections felt familiar, there is no need to fix them immediately. Noticing is already movement, and often that's enough to let the path find its balance again. Awakening doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds step by step, through humility, through clarity, through a kind of honesty that keeps softening the heart. And the deepest challenges on this path are rarely somewhere outside. They live inside, in fear, in the shadow, in quiet desires that don't want to be seen. The spiritual path at its core is not about reaching something higher. It's about working with what's already here, with the self, with how life is actually being lived. It's a process of inner reformation that slowly reshapes who you are and how you move through the world. Without that inner work, there is no real sovereignty, no grounded freedom, no capacity to live as a conscious participant in life. So when the search starts to go sideways, it isn't a punishment, it's an invitation to return, to listen more closely, to meet what's arising with presence instead of trying to rise above it. And often, that's where the search becomes real again.